some brewing inside of me. Clouds moving round my heart. Something's changing that I can't see. I'm stuck, so what I know is safe, but not where I'm supposed to be. I feel the call of something more. I feel the call of something I never felt before. I feel the call of something more. I feel the call, it's asking, what am I here for? 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 They say that pain pushes till the vision pulls. It feels like my safety net is falling down. I wish I had a map of where to go. I got this feeling in my soul. When I get there, I will know. I feel the call of something more. I feel the call of something I've never felt before. I feel the call of something more. I feel the call, it's asking, what am I here for? 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 Wanna make a move right now, though I don't know where or how. When I trust and know the truth, my heart will point the way. There is more of me to share, so today I do declare I will take that faith in and let my light shine. The call of something more. I feel the call of something I never felt before. I feel the call of something more. I feel the call, it's asking, what am I here for? 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 What am I here for?
What a perfect song selection, and how perfectly done. Thank you, Michael. Well, what a delight to see all of you here. So send me off as I deliver my last Sunday lesson to you after 12 years as your senior minister, and crazily enough, as the second longest serving minister of this spiritual community after our founder, Ethel Higgins. It blows my mind. So what does one talk about on their last day? Now, obviously, I've given this a lot of thought in these last 2 months since I gave my notice. Do I talk about my relationship with the church, which stretches through the years before I even moved to San Francisco? You missed that, Sharon, but you may remember I saw this church on my way back to the airport, on my way back to Indianapolis when my brother was taking me to the airport. And I thought, when I move to San Francisco, I'm going to go there. I did talk about that. I did talk about my relationship in early July. Do I talk about the incredible people we have in our center? People who include our wonderful board, Josephine Tan, Susan Ledford, Randy Swindell, and Helen Yee, and real stalwarts of spiritual service. who include longtime volunteers. I won't say old timers, like Cheryl Hodgins, Mary Ellen Jarek, Valerie Hatfield, I know is here somewhere, and of course, the incomparable Ron Willis. And I did talk about them at our volunteer appreciation at the end of January, and so many more. Keep thinking I see Lynn Zachariah. Is that, wow. Awesome. Wow. Lynn Zachariah most definitely is included in that group of people who have been foundational to our church and people who have helped me more than I can ever express. Thank you so much. So what else could I talk about? Talked about my relationship with church, talked about these incredible people who are part of this community. What can I leave you with as I stand at this pulpit one more time? I know spiritual truth. Yeah, not an unambitious topic. And not just one spiritual truth, but 5. My top 5 spiritual truths. Something easy to tackle like that. So as I often do, I turn to dictionary.com first to find out what truth even means. And I was very intrigued to find out that it has always been associated with spiritual life. The word truth has always been associated with spiritual life because it comes from an old Norse word that means faith. So quite literally, my truths are my faith. So I've been meditating, of course, on what my top spiritual truths are, and that mental exercise took me down memory lane. Not all of you have heard about my spiritual journey, or you've heard little dribs and drabs, and I'm going to give you a very brief outline of what it's been. My spiritual journey started at the age of 15, when I had an experience of God that was so clearly extraordinary, that I knew it had to come from the divine. I've been on the path ever since with varying degrees of fervor and with some interesting stops along the way. At the age of 15, as I was with parents who were disenchanted and non-churchgoers, they were disenchanted with religion. And I had to find my own outlets as a high school student in Dallas. So I turned to young life and I became born again. I defined myself as born again, steeped in a conservative Christianity that believed we were born sinners and could only find salvation through Jesus Christ. When I left Texas to go to college in Southern California, because I was 18 free and in California, I pretty much abandoned those narrow beliefs to widen my spiritual search. And I loved the first comparative religion course that I took, which led me to a very deep interest in discovering more about all of the major faith traditions of the world. Now, I first found unity when I was back in Texas after college, starting a career as a magazine journalist. And my boyfriend at the time, whose name was Rob Wright, I used to call him Mr. Wright, but he wasn't. He took me to Unity of Dallas for a service. And he told me it's all the good stuff without all that yucky sin stuff. Okay, I'll go there. So I've been exposed to Unity for 40 years now. And this theology has kept me coming back even as I continued my spiritual seeking. I've told a couple people when I lived in Indianapolis for a job, I used to attend 2 services on a Sunday. I would go to the Episcopal Church because I loved the beautiful stained glass and the music and the incense. And then I would go to Unity of Indianapolis for the theology. And in those 40 years, since I discovered Unity, I also discovered the 12 steps of AA, which is another spiritual system that has had a great impact on me. I became born again when my father was dying and I needed some ready-made answers. I later abandoned that again to pursue book projects that required me to study the sacred scriptures of other faith traditions, in which I found so much truth that I pursued a master's degree in culture and spirituality at Holy Names University. I spent 4 years in the spiritual direction program at Mercy Center. I've gone to countless spiritually oriented workshops and courses. And I later went through the seminary program at One Spirit Interfaith Seminary to become an ordained interfaith minister. So as you can see, I had a lot to potentially draw from when trying to decide what my top 5 spiritual truths are. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that my top 5 spiritual truths are in fact Unity's 5 principles. And when I realized that, I thought, how perfect. My last talk as the senior minister of Unity Spiritual Center of San Francisco, because as you know, along the way, I also became ordained as a Unity minister in 2014, is going to be about Unity's 5 principles. How perfect. So here we go, a quick run through my top 5 spiritual truths, which also happen to be Unity's 5 principles. I'm going to go with the wording that you see on the screen. That's the wording that is used for children, because the adult version of the 5 principles is pretty densely worded. And though I love words enough to actually look up what their etymology is, I find the children's version of the 5 principles far more graspable. So here we go. Number 1, God is all good and active in everything, everywhere. God is all good and active everywhere. How comforting to hold on to a divine presence that we know is all good. So many of us did spend time in religious institutions and religious structures that taught duality. And if you flip through the Old Testament at all, you do see depicted a God that can be wrathful and punishing and frightening. In conservative Christian circles, you also hear talk about spiritual entities that promote evil, the enemy. No wonder so many people have given up religion, have given up on religion in our Judeo-Christian society. But Unity teaches that these depictions are not the truth. They teach that God is all good and is the one presence and power active as the universe and as my life. This teaching is the answer to one of my favorite quotations from Albert Einstein, who said, the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe. The most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe. At Unity, we live in a friendly universe. At Unity, we remember that, as Reverend Brock said last week in his lesson, things do not happen to us, they happen for us, for our growth. God is all good. The second principle, I am naturally good because God's divinity is in me and in everyone. So this is the visual aid to that spiritual principle. We all have a divine flame within, and how life-saving that spiritual principle is, and how hard it can be to claim when so many of us were taught in previous years that we were born sinners. And so much, even if we weren't taught that, so much of our personal pain, and I'll tell you what, as a minister, this has broken my heart more than anything, is when beautiful people believe that they're not whole, that they're not enough. But we are good, we are enough, and this principle reminds us of that fact. We are individualized expressions of God, We are born good. And if we have any spiritual work to do, it's to unpack and unlayer the beliefs that have covered that awareness up. And it's true about everyone. So this spiritual truth not only helps us to love and appreciate and be compassionate to ourselves, it helps us to love and appreciate and be kind to others, to look for the divinity in them, in others. And I think all we need to do is look at the news of the day to realize that seeing the divinity in ourselves and in others is what we're going to need to survive on the planet. Which leads us to the power of the third principle. I create my experiences by what I choose to think and what I feel and believe. We have the power. We have more power than we can even dream of. And we can create our experiences by choosing what to think, feel, and believe. Another one of my favorite quotations, although it's certainly not from a spiritual guru, comes from Henry Ford. And I'm sure some of you have heard this before. He said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. A lot of wisdom in that statement. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. We always have a choice to go for the better feeling, the better belief, the better thought. And it is this spiritual truth that can change lives. I know that it has changed mine. The fourth unity principle is through affirmative action and meditation, I connect with God and bring out the good in my life. Now, this belief that we can connect with God through prayer and meditation has been one of the guiding motivators of much of my work. Because many of the 9 books that I've authored, in fact, pretty much all of them, have explored ways to connect with the divine. Because I've always felt that if we could actually connect with the divine, if we could actually connect with the highest intelligence in the universe, what greater subject for study could there be than how to do that and do that more effectively? And the thing that I want to leave you with regarding this is not everybody prays and meditates in the same way. Unity has some wonderful principles for how to sit in the silence. You know, there are all kinds of meditation techniques, but what's most important is to remember that you are an individual in this human incarnation that you are an individual, and not every way is going to feel right to you. So search for the ways that do feel right to you, and don't give up until you find them. As you know, one of my ways is through art. It's through creative practices that turned out to be spiritual practices. There are, what did Rumi say? There are a million ways to pray. There's thousands of things that you can do. And my hope is that each one of you will find what is most resonant to you and what brings you into the presence of God. Because that practice will surely bring out the good in your life. Finally, and most importantly, our fifth unity principle tells us that it's not enough to know these truths. We must act on them. As the children's version says, I do and give my best by living the truth I know. I make a difference. Now, should you forget that, and I hope I have enough, I brought in little cards that say, you make a difference to give to you, so you won't forget it. Because my beloved community, you do make a difference, and the world needs you now more than ever before. These 5 unity principles, which happen to be my top 5 spiritual truths, will enable you to accomplish all that you dream of in your personal life in all that we pray for in our collective life. And as Martin Luther King Jr. said, now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time to spiritually fortify yourself with these truths, because there is so much work to be done in our communities and the world. So I want to close with prayer that was recently shared by Renaissance Unity in Detroit. Infinite presence, place within us your divine inspiration and motivation to think past our own lifetime in evolving this planet. Give us the strength, tenacity, and perseverance to stay on course until change happens. Help us to realize we are all unique expressions of you, honoring each other's lifestyle, culture, and religion. Thank you, God, for igniting in us the desire to be proactive in creating a peaceful world. And so it is. Thank you, God. Thank all of you. I love you. So for our meditation, I'm going to do something different. This is not a guided meditation, so the lights don't really have to be off, but they can be, it's fine. And Michael doesn't really have to play, but he can if he wants to, it's fine. There is something that I want to read to you. It's a proclamation from Mayor London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco. And I want to read it to you because these are indeed words to meditate on. This was in honor to recognize our 75th anniversary. So I'm going to read you these words. Proclamation. Whereas the city and county of San Francisco traditionally recognizes organizations which have made significant and meaningful contributions to the vitality of our city, and the incredible work of Unity Spiritual Center of San Francisco truly represents San Francisco values at their best. And whereas founded in November of 1946, a group of faithful people gathered for the first time to celebrate and worship as Unity Christ Church. And whereas since its inception, a wondrous and diverse community of spiritual seekers have come to get together to welcome and unite all people, no matter where they are on their individual spiritual journey. And whereas Unity Christ Church was served by founding minister Reverend Ethel Higgins for 25 years and was subsequently followed by 9 ministers, including the present senior minister, Reverend Maggie Oman Shannon. And whereas in 2010, to reflect the expansion of community services, Unity Christ Church changed its name to Unity Spiritual Center of San Francisco. And whereas Unity Spiritual Center of San Francisco has focused on serving the community through outreach and projects for the good of the greater San Francisco area. And whereas Unity Spiritual Center has resided in the same building for 65 years at the corner of Ocean and 19th Avenues, providing spiritual guidance and services to the community and neighborhood. And therefore, be it resolved that I, London and Breed, Mayor of the City and County of San Francisco, in honor of Unity Spiritual Center of San Francisco's 75th anniversary, do hereby proclaim November 3rd, 2021 as Unity Spiritual Center of San Francisco Day in San Francisco. Those are words well worth meditating on. I hope that this will get framed and put in the hallway. And I want to thank two people for making that happen. The first person is my husband, who had the idea. And the second person, perhaps more importantly, is Reverend Jerry, who many emails later was able to procure this, but who also came up with the beautiful wording of this proclamation, didn't look over anything that needed to be mentioned. No stone was left unturned. This is such a beautiful gift to the community. So thank you, Reverend Jerry, for all your efforts to make that happen. And I was just thrilled. He came in on Thursday as I'm like getting cuts on my fingers and breaking nails, trying to get everything clean out of my office. He said, well, I have a surprise for you. It finally came. So nice that this came in time for me to be able to read it to you today. So what comes next? The usual? The usual. Let me take a glass. Oh, how nice it is to say, as we do every Sunday, that here at Unity Spiritual Center, we are an ocean of love. And if we're giving credit where credit is due, that tagline is thanks to Ms. Juanita Tysky, who I don't remember what the circumstances were, but that was completely your creation, and how exciting that we get to live into it, to being an ocean of love. So, because of the love, that's right. So here at Unity Spiritual Center, we have an exciting vision, an exciting mission, and compelling values by which we strive to live. And I invite you to join with me in saying them aloud. And I also invite you to think about what mission, vision, and values Unity Spiritual Center might want to have for its next 75 years. You have such a great opportunity here to build on what's already been established. And I know that I am just one of many people who is going to be so excited to see what this community comes up with for its exciting future and its next 75 years. But what we have been practicing is a vision that's centered in God. We co-create a world powerfully transformed through the growing movement of shared spiritual awakening. And our mission is we are a creative, joy-filled spiritual community dedicated to healing, inspiring, and transforming the lives of all people through prayer, education, and love. And our values are, we are spirit-led, generous with resources, inclusive, joyously creative, and guided by integrity. And in this space, feeling inspired by our history, feeling inspired by our community, feeling inspired by what we've experienced here today and what we're going to experience later on. Let us take time now to be a channel for enrichment through our generous tithes and love offerings. As Michael shares another beautiful song, please do take that time to write out a check to USC, or if you're on Zoom, to make a donation online using the link that Jerry just put in the chat. And if you're here in the sanctuary, the ushers will come to take your offering. Practicing the principle of tithing ourselves as a spiritual community, we are pleased to tithe 10% of the offering collected every Sunday to various Unity organizations and local nonprofits serving our city. So let's take a moment now to bless our offerings, holding them in our hands or next to our hearts as we say our offertory prayer. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God.
We're going there. So if anyone feels motivated and wants to look in the basket for something to make some noise with, I encourage it. You're done. Your cowbell career is done unless you feel it. But you have to feel it. I share my life with God, good and given. I give thanks for this time that I'm given. I am so blessed in the love that I'm receiving. I share my life with God, good and given. I feel the presence of God every day, at home, at work, or at play. I spread the good my own special way. So listen to what I gotta say. I share my life with God, good and given. I give thanks for this time that I'm living. I am so blessed in the love that I'm receiving. I share my life with God, good and given. I give a lot and I'm gonna give more from the moment that I walk out the door. There is truth that is hard to ignore. I feel better than I've ever felt before. I share my life with God, good and given. I give thanks for this time that I'm living. I am so blessed in the love that I'm receiving. I share my life with God, good and given. So I believe that every minute has something very special in it. So jump on in and don't you quit it. Find the light and know that God has lit it. I share my life with God, good and given. I give thanks for this time that I'm living. I am so blessed in the love that I'm receiving. I share my life with God, good and given. I live to give a simple pleasure. It comes back to me in ways I can't measure. No need to rush. It's at my leisure. I shall share and give away this treasure. I share my life with God, good and given. I give thanks for this time that I'm living. I am so blessed in the love that I'm receiving. I share my life with God, good and given. There it is.